Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we are doing the finale of my 2022 eyeshadow palette challenge. If you're new to this series, I was challenging myself in 2022 to use all of my palettes at least once in like a new way, whether I was using colors that I don't normally use in that palette, or whether it was a technique that I don't normally do, or just trying to push myself outside of my little box of like pinks that I like to wear, you know? So these are the final 7 palettes that I had left to use within my collection. I am filming this in January. My end of the year videos are coming a little bit late this year, but that's okay. And I think we can count this year as a success. I did manage to use all of my palettes. And at the end of the video, I'm going to talk to you guys about what I sort of learned from doing this challenge. So the first one I'm going to talk about is this one from Tarte. This is the Rainforest of the Sea Volume 3 eyeshadow palette. This is a favorite of mine. This is one of those, like, I've got to get out the door and I need quick makeup eyeshadow palettes for me. So I will say there is one matte in the palette and it's awful. It's not good. It's one of those where every time I use it, I get like hard pan and then like nothing comes off of it. And also it's the color of my skin. So when I use this palette, usually I just put a little bit of like my bronzer or my blush in my crease, and then I go onto the lid with one of these like shimmery colors. So in the look that I did with this one, the only thing that I use this palette a lot. So this is a hard one where there wasn't really something new that I could do with this palette without adding in a bunch of new palettes. So I'm trying to use the one palette kind of on its own when I'm doing this challenge. So one that I don't use very often is this darker color here. I tend to take one of these like lighter colors, one of these 3, or like this one on my lid, and then I usually take one of these 2 in like the inner corner. So what I did this go around was I actually smudged this darker color along the lash lines, and I liked the way that that looked. It wasn't like, you know, crazy unique or anything like that. I mean, it's a basic neutral like champagne eyeshadow palette. So this one wasn't really, like I said, a challenge to use because this is kind of a go-to for me on a day-to-day basis anyway. The next one that I'm going to talk about is what I have on my eyes today, and this is the Storybook Cosmetics Little Briar Rose palette. This is such a beautiful, like, I know that it's bulky packaging. I know it is, but I just love that it looks like a little storybook. I just think that's so cute. It's one of those things where it just makes me happy to look at it. This did have a broken eyeshadow in it. I very carefully repressed that yesterday. I'm going to try to not blind you with the mirror. This one here I had to repress yesterday. It's already cracking again, so I just don't know. But I did use this palette today, and I was kind of looking at it to see what colors hadn't I used. And I had never really, I think I had used this darker blue, but I hadn't used this lighter one. So I wanted to do something with these 2, but I also had never used these 2. I think I kind of do like more of these pinky color. I know, it's shocking. I use the pink colors in the palette normally. So what I did for my eye look today is I took this shade called Woodland. In my crease, I went in with Enchanted all over the lid and did sort of a sparkly like champagne eyelid. And then I created my wing with this dark blue, and then I lined the lower lash line with this lighter blue called Castle. And I think it's cool. It's different for me. It's definitely more like lash line heavy of a look for me. Normally I do like more in the crease and not a lot of eyeliner. So a little bit of a different look for me. I do think these shadows perform really well. I don't think that this is a brand anymore. I looked online. I don't think they're doing anything. I don't think they've put anything out since COVID. So that's sad because I did really love the packaging and I think the quality was really good. The next one is my favorite eyeshadow palette in my collection, and this is the Natasha Denona Retro palette. This is a love of mine. I love this one so much. My husband bought this one for me for my birthday, I think last year. It is my only full, like midi size Natasha Denona palette. All of my other Natasha Denona ones are like the mini size. I just love this so much. This is very much like my wheelhouse of colors. I know it's shocking, but I do tend to stick more into these like pinky mauvey shades, and I really like this sort of taupey shimmery color right here. So when I used this color this time, I wanted to kind of stick into this quadrant of shades that are a little bit more on the warmer terracotta side, just because those are different for me within this palette. So I really like the way that that turned out. This is just a stunning palette. I would like to get another midi-sized Natasha Denona palette someday, but doing this challenge has really, I'll talk about this more at the end, but it's kind of taken away some of my desire to buy new palettes all of the time. I have so many beautiful palettes. I love this one so much. Next up, I have the Cab Cosmetics Day to Night eyeshadow palette. This one looks like this, very much like a warm toned neutral palette with a couple of pops of more cool toned colors over there. And you guys know me, I generally go into these or I do this sort of sunset pink color, you know, so I wanted to do something with these like deeper, warmer tones here, and that's what I did. So I think I took, it's hard to remember, I really should have been taking notes of exactly which shades that I did, but I went into these two for sure in the crease and the outer corner. I placed burgundy, this one here, all over the lid, and then I took this color called Stella along the lash line, and that's sort of a new thing that I'm playing with, is doing these more metallic colors on the lower lash line. I do generally stick to more mattes on the lower lash line, and I like the way that that turned out. This is definitely not like a favorite eyeshadow palette in my collection. I think you can see that some of these colors are getting like hard pan on them, and it's from me trying to use my finger. I really like to apply my metallic eyeshadows with my finger. This one you really have to go in with a brush, and I always forget that, and I always go in with my finger, and then I get hard pan, and it's a whole weird thing. So this is one of those palettes that's just okay. It's sort of like, it kind of falls in line with me in my mind with like my Morphe palette that I have. I think I used that one early on in the year. It's just okay. And then I have this one's always hard to show because it's really metallic. This is the Urban Decay Heavy Metals palette. This was holiday a few years ago. I actually think I bought this the year that I started my YouTube channel, which is, this is one of the older palettes in my collection, and it looks like this. It's all mirrors, so it's really hard to show. But I do obviously generally stay into this more neutral side. I have dipped into the purples quite a few times. So this time I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I had never touched this color here called Aluminum, and it is that sort of aluminum silver color. I do sometimes use like this one on the inner corner, but that day I wanted to go in with that one there, and I think I just took my blush that day into my crease, and then I took that aluminum shade all over the lid, and I thought that looked really cool. It was like a cool combo, and very simple. Most of the looks I did this time were pretty simple just because it was a really busy time of year. And then I have the Stone Cold Fox palette from Colourpop. I did a really simple look with this one actually, and it is a, you know, cool toned neutral eyeshadow palette. So I wasn't looking to do anything super smoky that day, but I do generally stick to the outside rows. I really like these like more mauvey, sort of neutral colors on the sides here. So I wanted to do something more in the middle because that's not normally what I do. And I had never touched any of these just like neutral browns. So I just did a really simple eye look with, I think, this color and this color in the crease, and then this one all over the lid. Very simple. I do love this palette. However, I don't think it's the same like good Colourpop formula that we're used to. I think it's just a little bit lesser in terms of quality. One that I think is really high quality is the So Jaded Kathleen Lights and Colourpop collaboration palette. This is like my second favorite eyeshadow palette in my collection next to the Natasha Denona retro palette. It's like I saved a couple of my favorites for the end. I just think there's so much going on in this palette. It's just such a fun one. There's a few colors in here that I haven't used, but that day I decided to do something with this kind of aquamarine shade right here as sort of the star of the show. I really loved the way that that turned out. It was very much like a Frozen fantasy kind of moment. And then I took this sort of purpley blue shade on the lower lash line, and I thought that was like a really interesting color combo. And that's one thing that I love about this palette. There's so many different colors in here. There's just really cool combinations that you can do within this palette. So those are the 7 eyeshadow palettes that I had left to work with. It was a challenge. So as you know, I'm wearing the Storybook Cosmetics palette today. As I said, it is the 10th of January. I think it's the 10th of January. So technically I didn't use them all within the calendar year. However, I used them all within the period of time that I was filming these videos. So I'm gonna still count it as a win. I found this to be very challenging. I knew I had a lot of eyeshadow palettes. However, there were some things that went on this year that I couldn't have planned for. So there were like long stretches of time where I wasn't doing like creative makeup. I was just like surviving. So I think because of that, it was a little bit like I was doing really well in terms of momentum until about September when my mother-in-law went into the hospital, and then the whole year basically fell apart after that. So up until then, I had been doing really good. So I think, you know, if everything had just been like a normal year, I think it wouldn't have been too challenging. However, it does make me realize that I have more eyeshadow palettes in my collection than I can realistically use within a year. Did that make me want to declutter any of them? Not really. It's one of those things. I have a large collection. I don't have a super huge collection. I do try to keep it like fairly curated, but palettes specifically are a bit of like a collector's. I have a collector's mentality around eyeshadow palettes. I don't mind that I have more than I can use in a calendar year. I think it's just like good to know that, you know? It did, however, kind of curb my appetite for new palettes this year. I didn't really look at buying any new ones. There were a couple that caught my eye, that I'm still sort of thinking about, but nothing that I felt like I had to rush out and get, because I knew, I was like, I have so many palettes left to use. I don't need to add any new ones. I think I only got 2 or 3 in subscription boxes this year, so it wasn't too bad. There was a time where I think I was getting a new eyeshadow palette every month in a BoxyCharm, so I have changed some of my settings for that reason. But all in all, I think this was a really great way to sort of challenge myself to A, use the things that I have in my collection, but B, push myself out of my comfort zone in terms of what I'm doing with my makeup. I'm excited going forward in 2023. I'm not going to do another challenge like this again, obviously, this year. I don't think there'd be any point in doing this a second time, but I'm excited going forward in 2023 to go back into some of these eyeshadow palettes. Some of the palettes that, because I had to use basically a different eyeshadow palette every time I did my makeup, maybe not every time I did my makeup, but every time I was like taking some time to do my makeup, I didn't really get to hone in on any one palette. So for example, when I was digging into the So Jaded palette, I realized like I've never used this really cool green color right here, and I've never used this really beautiful purple right here. Like there are colors in my palettes that I'm excited to go back into and use again. I've tried some new techniques that I've really enjoyed this year. I've really gotten into this like colored wing moment. I tried a halo eye this year. I really love the way that that turned out. So I think this was a great learning experience for me. I hope you guys enjoyed following along with it. Let me know in the comments down below, do you have any of these palettes? Which was your favorite look? And are you good about like rotating through your palettes? I know a few of you have left comments saying that you try to like rotate through every week a different palette. And I just love to see that. I love to see us rotating through our makeup and using all of the things and getting joy from the things that we've already spent our money on. So anyway, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon in another video. Bye.